Robots took my podcast, man.
7 o'clock, Psycho sees Santa's workshop, and only Lee Majors can stop them. In the night the reindeer died. Be here.
You can't show that commercial. That thing looked like the Manson family Christmas special.
Think I'm way off base?
Yes, you're a tad off base, sir.
Frank Cross is more than the youngest network president in television history.
Call security, have them change his locks, and toss him out of the building.
Oh, he's fired? It's Christmas.
Thank you. Call accounting. Stop his bonus. Oh, watch out.
Ah!
He's a thoughtful boss,
Thanks, boys. Get the nurse.
a generous brother,
What did he give you last year?
I don't remember. A shower curtain. Ma'am, I think you dropped something here.
and a true humanitarian.
I can't get the antlers glued onto this little guy. We tried crazy glue.
Have you tried Staples?
But his life is about to change.
You are going to be visited by 3 ghosts tomorrow at noon.
God, tomorrow's bad for me, Lou. As a matter of fact, the whole rest of the week is a washout. Ow.
Anyone who thinks he hates Christmas is wrong.
Come back to Jersey, you moron!
It's ghosts he hates.
I'm the ghost of Christmas present.
Bill Murray, Karen Allen,
It sounded like you'd seen a ghost.
A ghost?
John Forsythe, Bobcat Goldthwait,
Hey! You glad to see me, or is this a shotgun in your pocket? You know this one?
Everybody knows this one. Let's go now.
Now does everybody know this one?
Carol Kane, Robert Mitchum,
I really care!
David Johansen.
Oh, I'm having the weirdest day!
See Bill Murray get Scrooged.
Hey, back off, big man. That may work with the chicks, but not with me.
Welcome to our podcast, The Robots Took My Podcast. I am Jordan.
And I am Anthony.
Anthony, we have a guest today, don't we?
Yeah, we have a special guest today. Glad he could make it. My friend Joe, longtime friend, and I guess film fanatic, movie lover. Joe, is that accurate?
That seems to be the case, yes. Cinephile, film fanatic, probably on the spectrum.
It's okay. I'm here probably.
As we all are.
Yes.
But yeah, so Joe, whenever we have guests, typically the guest picks the movie. And this week, Joe, we have what film have you brought to us today?
Well, since it's the holidays, we went through a few options for 80s holiday films, some modern contemporary classics, and I suggested Scrooged, which is a flawed but endearing and funny take on the Dickens classic Christmas Carol.
Yeah,
Scrooged,
and it's Murray's returning from a 4-year hiatus from film after Ghostbusters, Living in Paris,
Yeah.
being surly. Yeah.
A note about that's interesting. He literally went on a hiatus after Ghostbusters. I didn't realize this, and he really had to be like reeled into this movie, persuaded to the tune of $6 million to act in this movie.
Yeah.
He really did not care. I don't think he actually gave a fuck. Pardon my French.
He was living in France, I guess, after Ghostbusters, and he had not done film as the solo lead. He took a shot at it with I think it's the Razor's Edge or something like that.
Yeah,
and it was
is
just
serious role.
a horrible, disaster. And he was getting these scripts that were, I think he at one time got the script for Legal Eagles, which was also an Ivan Reitman film.
Yeah,
and was like,
movie.
Which is a great cheesy little 80s ripoff of Charade in a way. But he worked on this script for a long time with one of the co-writers, a buddy of his from SNL, and
Michael O'Donoghue and Mitch Glazer.
Yeah. So they settled on this one, and it turned out to be a surprise hit despite the difficulties in filming.
Yeah. And that's one of the most interesting things about this. Like this, regardless of how you feel about this movie, it is currently a Christmas classic. I haven't seen this movie, sat down and watched it in a very long time, but it's been on TV during the holidays every year.
It was on God, I remember it being on cable so much too. Once again, I say that a lot in this podcast, but you know.
Yeah, it's not on everyone's like big lineup usually because it's not exactly a family friendly film, but as you get older, you appreciate films differently. And I'm at the point now where I actually hate Christmas Vacation and love this movie.
Oh, exactly. That's not cynical enough, Joe. we need our just a little drop of cynicism every holiday in our eggnog. You know?
Well, it's nice to have a true redemption story when it comes to Christmas, and that's really what this movie's about. But I just don't get again, maybe I've just gotten older and cynical, but the whole vacation thing and nothing about the Griswold clan is remotely likable as you get to know them. And the movie gets a little obnoxious by the end. So this is kind of the opposite, where it starts obnoxious and you see the guy turn it around at the end.
Yeah. And this was directed by Richard Donner. Now,
yeah.
Jordan, who's Richard Donner?
Oh, my God. Richard Donner, director of Superman the movie, The Omen, Goonies, the Lethal Weapon series. I mean, I think he was known to be, I think most actors liked working with him, too. He seemed to be one of those Ron Howard types, directors. Easygoing on the set, knew how to communicate with everybody on every level.
But a traditional director who's used to having his vision come out on screen.
Right. Him and Murray clashed over this movie, apparently. I mean, clashed is putting it lightly. They really fought, apparently, on this. And it kind of bleeds through, I think, in some areas, through the movie, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, on screen.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute here. But definitely, I think, when movies are made, they're always chaos. And then a lot of those behind-the-scene problems don't really make it. It's lightning in a bottle, so you can't tell that. This is a movie, I think, that is very much, I wouldn't say tainted, but influenced by a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. But I just want to drop this. Sidney Pollack was originally attached to this, and he clashed with O'Donoghue.
He worked with Murray on Tootsie already.
Yeah, that would have been a different film. I think I prefer Donner at the helm here. Pollack's a little more of a serious director despite Tootsie, but I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Pollack, also an easygoing director somewhat back then.
Underrated actor, too.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. He was great in Eyes Wide Shut.
And Michael Clayton.
Yeah.
And he also plays the agent in Tootsie.
That's right. I loved it,
at Dustin Hoffman's suggestion, because he said nobody could reel him in as an actor except like he could. And so their chemistry really, but that's I guess another podcast.
Yeah.
I met Pollack at a Q&A name dropping. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Jordan, you're dropping names all over the place. You got to pick them up. Keep it clean.
Sorry. I met Pollack in person at a Q&A once, and I remember somebody asking him, those scenes between you and Michael, or those scenes between you and Dustin Hoffman seem like there's real conflict, and he just kind of he went numb a bit, actually. Anyway.
Okay, so we begin this film, and how do we begin? Does anyone take a stab at this? What is your first impression of this movie?
Well, if I may, I think that the movie starting off with these fake commercials in the studio, the TV executives, is hilarious because you've got a time capsule with this Robert Goulet Christmas, and the Creole Christmas thing, which is just absurd and hilarious, but no one today is really going to remember who Robert Goulet was. And then Lee Majors defending Santa from violent terrorists, which is but hilarious because I think there's a movie out right now with David Harbour where Santa's fighting violent terrorists. So it was almost a precedent.
Yeah. I was going to mention the fact that too this movie has I'm being a nerd on the special effects. This was done by DreamQuest Images back then, and DreamQuest was known for doing practical effects really well. And we open on a nice sweeping miniature of the North Pole. Basically, with a sweeping camera shot right over the North Pole. Before we get to the Lee Majors bit, of course.
With Danny Elfman music.
I agreed. Yeah, Danny Elfman power big time. I love Danny Elfman.
And he got an Oscar nomination for special effects, too, didn't he?
For makeup effects, and it lost to Beetlejuice. That was a tough category. I mean, you talk about a bunch of... Because you had Coming to America, Rick Baker, Power Girl.
Yeah, but with this swooping like dolly shot or whatever through this miniature as we go into that commercial, right? And the Elfman music, this almost felt like a Tim Burton movie. I was getting serious Beetlejuice vibes.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That is the weird aspect of it. Yeah, it really throws you off the opening of this movie because that's right before the commercials or anything. You don't know you're going to go into this, Lee Majors movie.
Yeah.
So this Lee Majors canon film, basically.
And I realized at this moment, not watching a Tim Burton movie, the obvious is like how much Tim Burton movies really rely on Elfman music to set the tone. Elfman's score to this is fantastic. It gives it this whimsical, endearing vibe. It's a character in the film.
I concur. It's almost as like you can't imagine a Hitchcock movie without Bernard Herrmann. You can't imagine a Spielberg movie without John Williams, mostly. It's that kind of thing, I think, honestly.
And to Joe's point, we get this really fun Kentucky Fried Movie, Amazon Women on the Moon commercial parodies that basically are telling us that there's this IBC, this TV channel, and this movie is really a satire, a media satire at its core, which is really interesting.
Yeah. And the oddest part of the whole thing, I think the fact that it's almost like network vibes here.
Especially.
Like the movie Network.
Yeah, especially
1976. Which I didn't watch. I'd never seen Network back when I was a kid and saw this movie. So I didn't make the connection. But man.
I do want to say that, so Robert Mitchum plays the president of the network, or the CEO, and his name in this movie is Preston Rhinelander, and that is the greatest name. Preston Rhinelander.
I can see that monogrammed on something. That's such a.
He brings out his own. Well, I'm skipping ahead, but he brings out his own silverware at the lunch scene. It's just a great character.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Anyway,
so should we address the whole Lee Majors Saves Christmas part? I mean, at first, that's the part I love the most, honestly, when Lee Majors shows up and, Santa tells him, by the way, Lee, you've been a good boy this year.
He's been a real good. So the gun he's using in that is the same gun Jesse Ventura uses in Predator.
I was wondering.
That's a helicopter gun.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
It's a Gatling gun, from a helicopter, apparently. I remember Jesse Ventura talking about it.
So it's the same exact one. And you see these elves getting, blown away. And it's just
it's fantastic.
It's just hilarious.
It deserves its own film. I mean, really.
And then, of course, Robert Goulet's Cajun Christmas. And it's the real Robert Goulet. This is before Will Ferrell was even making fun of him.
And who can forget that? Yeah. A timeless holiday classic. But that sets you...
Silver bells. Yes.
That puts you in the gator comes up. Anyway, that really sets the comedic... dark comedic tone here, and we get that basically Frank Cross is Murray's character. He's the youngest president of this network, or youngest network exec in history, and then he's at a boardroom telling everybody that they're planning this big live Christmas Carol production with just a bunch of B-list, like Buddy Hackett's in it, Jamie Farr, like TV people, and he's like, we need more juice here, and then that
he's not happy with it, essentially, that they spent this much money, X amount of dollars.
So then, and we have a Bobcat Goldthwait sighting,
whom really steals this movie, in my opinion.
At gunpoint.
He's like the Cratch character, where he's just trying to do the right thing and spends the whole movie getting abused to the point of wanting to just go off the edge, but is redeemed with Bill Murray at the same time, turning it around. But that's at the end. But his arc is just so hilarious, and I think he doesn't do the crazy voice thing in the beginning. He's just this mild-mannered exec VP, and he's trying to tell him this is a little out of hand. It's Christmas. Let's just be kinder. And
he feels like he's always going to go into that voice, though.
Yeah, but, he's a great actor, Bobcat. I really want to give him props here. I
agree. Sir Bobcat Goldthwait.
I
knighted him just
Academy.
now.
Okay, so we have Bill Murray, or Frank, shows how he wants to sell this production, and he's going. And they're filming they have this already ready to go, and he's going to insert all these elements like solid gold dancers and all sorts of craziness. But then he shows this trailer.
This other reel, that's not so.
And that's when, like Joe mentioned, it talks about drugs, terrorism, freeway killings, cats and dogs living together,
nuclear holocaust,
mass hysteria,
every bad thing in the world.
This is Scrooge.
And remember the true spirit of Christmas.
At the end is that your life just might depend on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course Bobcat is defending. He said, "You can't show this. You can't show this, Mr. Cross. It might scare children. It's Christmas."
Yeah.
That's my best Bobcat right there. Sorry.
It's like a Manson family Christmas, and that's like Elliot Loudermilk is his character. It's brilliant. We're at sheer brilliance at this point. You know what I mean? All of this is fantastic. And Bill Murray or Frank has this assistant Grace. And he rips her kid's drawing. I mean, this dude has zero negative Christmas spirit. He's a complete asshole.
Yeah.
And who better to play this asshole than Bill Murray?
Yeah. I will say some of this, too, and to interject, sorry. The last thing we were talking about, that kind of feels like the most Michael O'Donoghue thing in the movie so far. Michael O'Donoghue, the writer of the script, who came from SNL and National Lampoon's magazine. And the dude wrote with... To put it like a film noir writer once described another writer, like Michael O'Donoghue wrote with a knife, essentially. Yeah. He had a sharp wit, so sharp it could be cutting and biting at the same time, and it could be very devilish, and he had a dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
Very dark sense of humor. And it shows...
Well, he was literally the first person ever on Saturday Night Live. That skit he did with Belushi, I want to feed your fingertips to Wolverines. He's the first he wrote that skit. He's the first guy ever on SNL.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it was the 70s, but SNL had a much more biting. You couldn't do a lot of that today.
No,
much more biting tone back then.
Oh, yeah. They got away with more back then.
Yeah, and humor was different, right? I think what people wanted to see was different.
And drugs were better.
Definitely O'Donoghue. Yeah, the drugs. Ask Murray.
Yeah.
And Michael O'Donoghue.
Oh, God. Yeah, to be a fly on the wall there and get a contact high. And I think a lot of the same backstage antics and cynicism and bickering really make it to this film more than 10 years later. You know what I mean? We're bringing in the usual suspects, these big egos with a biting wit who do not care about anyone else but what they think is funny.
Well, I think that's where the wheels come off the wagon is what do you think is funny? And I think Donner, Murray, and McDonough have these three different versions of funny that create the conflict and the kind of the choppiness of the film that, you kind of get over when you just kind of enjoy the ride.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, it's battling egos. But going back to the story, we'll get to that in a minute because I just want to catch us up here because Frank, he's like Ebenezer Scrooge in the sense that he not only just causes suffering around him, he relishes in it. He tears Grace's child's drawing off the wall. I mean, everyone he contacts, he's just awful to.
Yeah, Frank Cross, played by Bill Murray, is a screaming, self-centered, indulgent, jaded a-hole. I mean, this is a real stretch for Bill Murray, of course, playing this guy.
Oh yeah,
because we all know Bill Murray's a real sweetheart in reality.
But you gotta not want to walk out of the movie in the first 10 minutes. There's still that likability of that blue collar. Hey, this is still Bill Murray.
Yeah.
I think he's a bigger dick than even Ebenezer Scrooge, though.
Exactly.
So that's right, because he's tearing that. He doesn't realize his assistant's husband has died, that she's got a special needs kid from the trauma of witnessing the death. He wants to give his...
And he's one of, like, 5 kids she has.
He times how long it takes security to kick out Bobcat when they fire him.
Yeah.
And he's like... They're going through Christmas gifts, and this is a great scene where what are you going to give these people, a towel or a VCR? And he opts to give his brother a towel, and then he wins a humanitarian award and leaves the award in the cab because it's not real gold. Like I never caught that as a kid. Like, why does he flick it in that scene? He does that subtle flick, and when he realizes it's not real, he doesn't care about it.
Oh, that's right. I didn't get that originally as a kid either. I didn't understand why. I just thought he left it there because he really did not care. That was just how much he really cared so little about anything, even awards, But obviously that's that's the one thing. It's not made of gold.
He does exactly. That's what he cherishes, his career above all else. Not even the money, the prestige, the career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He wants to go to the top, but standing in his way, right, we have Princeton Rhinelander.
Played by Robert Mitchum.
The boss. I don't know who's higher than the president. I don't know how this hierarchy goes, but he's Frank's boss. And he hires Bryce Cummings.
Yes. Played by John Glover, who I think is a great. I always thought he was a great actor, John Glover.
Oh, he's fantastic, and he's the roommate of Preston's son from college. So this guy has right. So you see Frank Cross nepotism. Work his way up to this gig, and then this asshole, we were all frat buddies or college buddies or whatever, and I am having lunch with Preston, and it's like, oh god, I didn't think I could. Like, Bill Murray is not a great guy, and then this guy comes along, and you're like, oh shit, this is a horrible business.
Yeah, he is a West Coast douchebag, and that is exactly what Bill Murray's afraid of. Here's another young gun, and John Glover, who played a douchey CEO in Gremlins too,
Mr. Clamp,
right? Yeah. Just really, really great in this role. And you have more sympathy for him, strangely enough, than Murray's character for a lot of the film. He's just a hired gun.
I don't know. See, for me, I liked him less because there's the nepotism angle and there's the clear they sit down at a steakhouse and Mitchum orders a Scotch steak or whatever, and this guy's like, I'll have a salad and a sparkling water, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, he says I'll have the California plate.
Yeah, that's what it was, California plate, which is just avocados and pecans or some bullshit.
He said, make sure it's dairy free.
What a terrible person.
That is so ahead of its time, though. That is so ahead of its time, that joke.
He's like West Coast with the Madison Avenue attitude.
He reminds me of Peter Gallagher's character in The Player.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that movie.
Where he's going to an AA meeting and Tim Robbins is like, oh, I'm sorry, didn't realize you're an alcoholic. He's like, oh, I'm not. That's just where all the good writers hang out.
That's where all the deals are. Like he says, that's where all the deals are being made.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
We might have to bring you back for that movie, Joe, because that is something that bears.
Love to. I love any Altman film. You want me to talk about Altman? I'm game.
Brewster McCloud. How game are you?
Yeah, Brewster McCloud, McCabe Miss Miller, MASH, random Altman trivia. They had Paul Thomas Anderson as his standby for Prairie Home Companion because they thought he was going to die at any second.
Wow.
Oh, I didn't know that. Interesting.
This has been our Altman trivia moment. Thank you, Joe. Brought to you by
Oh, I was going to bring something into this I thought this is a weird kind of parallel here to the movie. So we have John Glover playing a guy who they bring in to help Frank Cross finish this thing. Okay, this reminds me of what happened to Donner on Superman 1 and 2. When they brought Richard Lester in, same kind of deal. And Richard Lester came on and he said the same kind of stuff to just like John Glover. He was like, hey, I won't look at your rushes. I won't look at your dailies. They brought me in to help you finish this thing. Don't think of it like I'm coming in to take your job or anything like that. But I thought that was a weird parallel watching this last night. I'm like,
that's a good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because fun fact, people, Superman 1 and 2 were made back to back. Anyway, I don't want to go off.
Oh, yeah. We
anyway, back to the movie.
That. So anyway, speaking of Hollywood nepotism, there are 4 of the Murray brothers from the Murray family of actors.
Yeah.
That's right. His youngest brother, John, we meet.
Who plays his real brother.
His real brother, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, Bill Murray's like an Irish gangster. He's like, you want me, you got to get the whole family.
Yeah.
Every film he's got to have a brother or two. And I like all of his brothers.
When I saw this as a kid, I had already seen his brother in that other movie that was on cable constantly called Moving Violation, starring James Keach also. And he was like the comic lead in that, John Murray was. And I remember watching Scrooged and going, wait a minute, that's his real brother, isn't it? What? They actually got his real brother in this movie. I was just thinking that in my head. I couldn't believe it. It was weird. Anyway.
But if you read in all fairness to Brian Doyle Murray, if you read the early days of these comedy legends, that Brian Doyle Murray was really the one that was opening the doors for Bill.
Older brother.
And he was, he co-wrote Caddyshack. He made a lot of introductions to Bill, who was at the time, I guess, could be described as a shiftless layabout.
Yeah.
And Brian Doyle Murray really is like not the Cooper Manning, but the guy who opened the door for his brother to get this career and is just as funny, if not funnier, than Bill.
Yeah, and I sense a Scrooge. When we start seeing his brothers enter the movie, I'm just like, there's one scene, and we'll get to it in a minute, whenever like they go to their home, the Ghost of Christmas Past, we'll get to in a second, but the Ghost of Christmas Past takes him to essentially the Murray home.
Yeah, and Brian Doyle's playing
exactly,
the daddy.
And I was just like, There's so much Freudian, I don't know what going on in this scene. Like, it's just very strange to me.
I thought it was weird too. It's almost like we go back in time and see Bill Murray's past all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Well, you could talk more about that when you talk about Caddyshack getting made and how much the Murray household bleeds into Danny's family background in Caddyshack.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because Murray worked on a golf course.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, that restaurant scene well, I guess we jumped up way too ahead because we were missing on the visit from Frank's previous boss.
Well, right before that, so he's walking with his brother on the street, and his brother's like, hey, come to my little lame Thanksgiving gathering. And then I just want to point this out. They're on the street in New York, and we hear some prime 80s sax. And then Bill Murray says, why don't the cops do something about this? And I agree. If there's 80s sax going on, we need to break it up.
And they're playing in the streets illegally, loitering with an 80s sax.
Yeah. And so he's not going to go. He like Joe said, he's just going to give him a towel. And I mean, it's sad, and they're just, I don't know. I just feel shades of the actual Murray relationship here. Maybe that's what Murray does. He brings his family on out of some comfort zone. And we find out that, like Joe mentioned, Grace's kid can't speak. He is this movie's Tiny Tim.
Yeah.
So it is tracking the Dickens story.
Wait, you mean it's not Murray Luretten as Tiny Tim?
No.
I'm confused.
I know, it's a show within a show. It's
okay. Oh, that's right.
Exactly.
Okay.
In our movie, in the real world, his assistant's kid is the Tiny Tim. But anyway, so he goes back to his office, and then Frank hears this knocking at the door. Someone's beating at the door, and then the door explodes. He grabs his gun in his office, and who do we see, Joe? Who is it? It's not Jacob Marley.
Well, I was going to say what we missed out on with the band playing on the street is you see Paul Schaefer and Miles Davis is in that band.
Oh, that's right. I didn't know. Oh, Miles Davis. I did see Paul Schaefer. I always did notice he was in the background.
Right. And that's a great little cameo where you're just like, oh, yeah, those guys. It's pretty funny if you're a Letterman fan seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see the ghosts coming, and it is none other.
This is after Frank has wandered back to the office.
Back to the office
to drink himself into depression.
And he's just fed up with everything, and he sees his boss Lou Hayward, and it is John Forsythe, who is
John Forsythe,
big powerhouse during the '80s in Dynasty. He was the voice of Charlie in Charlie's Angels. And he was the corrupt perv judge Al Pacino defended in Justice for All.
Justice for All, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was in about 50 TV movie the weeks in the 70s also, where he was the star, and it was always about a building burning down, and he was the head corporate guy.
But he walks in, and he's in his golfing uniform, and he is just decomposing. And, Bill Murray tries to justify it or explain it by saying that his vodka has been tainted by the Chernobyl explosion.
That's right. He says, you're a hallucination brought on by Russian vodka, poisoned by Chernobyl. Sounds like a very Michael O'Donoghue line, or maybe a Bill Murray line. I couldn't tell who wrote that, honestly.
Yeah, but it's a great performance and excellent makeup. He is lost in the makeup, but John Forsythe nails it. I wanted more of that scene, honestly.
Yeah.
In the novel, we get a little bit more of that relationship.
I was a scion of the industry, adored by women. Well, you paid for the women, Lou. Love that one.
Yeah.
But he looks like this because he's been dead for 7 years, basically, now. He's been dead and buried for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I guess he was buried in his golfing outfit.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, okay, here's our ghost. Where is Egon with a proton pack when you need him? This is New York. Is this not the same universe? I don't know.
Okay, so you make a good point. There's another Christmas movie that I was going to suggest, but it's a little too dark, but it's a Harold Ramis film called The Ice Harvest. And I was thinking after you and I texted last night about, what if Harold Ramis had directed this film?
Oh, yes.
Because Harold Ramis...
That would have made sense. That would have made a lot of sense. Yeah.
So it's well known that Dan Aykroyd, when he wrote Ghostbusters, wrote this really wacky sci-fi script for him and Belushi, and it was pretty much hot garbage. And Harold Ramis had to fix it and make it a...
It was more of a sci-fi movie, and him and Reitman kind of fixed it up, from what I understand. Added the reality to it.
Made it a funny movie. And what if Harold Ramis had somehow gotten his hands on this with Murray, and they had turned this, seeing their magic in Groundhog Day and Ghostbusters had turned this around. It may have been a cleaner film, but who knows?
Ivan Reitman,
he probably knew how to handle him.
Yeah, he would know how to handle Murray specifically.
Well,
because Donner was not an improviser's director.
No.
You know what I mean? He may have been an actor's director, but this is a different vibe that Bill Murray and different set of skills brings into this film, for better or for worse, as we'll see later.
Donner had a hard time handling Brando.
Yeah.
In Superman, and he had to trick Gene Hackman into shaving. Do you know the mustache story?
Yeah, I know that story on Superman the movie. Yeah. Oddly, Gene Hackman wanted to play Lex Luthor with a mustache for some reason, and Donner said, "I'll shave my mustache if you shave yours." And then later on, he acted like he didn't shave it, and Donner, he said, "Dick, you said you were going to shave your mustache if I shave mine," and he pulled off a fake mustache apparently.
Yeah, it's one of these things with Donner trying to navigate a lot of just Bill Murray and the writer as well. I think Karen Allen said in an interview that Bill Murray would stop a scene and be like, "I don't get this. I don't know. I don't understand this scene." And they would have to get the writers over at all hours, and they would have to just sit there so Bill Murray could figure out how he wanted to see. I mean, I don't know. Something happened with him between Ghostbusters and this movie in France where he was like,
she said it best, too, in that one interview. I found one interview from 2018 where she said, "I didn't understand Murray's process. I don't think anybody could figure it out." Something like that,
Well, I don't know that he had a process. I mean, he's just an ego.
Exactly.
And that was part. We'll touch on it here, but that was part of the problem. You had too many cooks in the kitchen, and Bill, they had a script.
Yeah.
Bill Murray came in, ripped it up basically, and at the end of the day, I think there were some probably good changes that came out of that, but at the end of the day, it was Murray just improvising. A lot of this. And in a mental state, returning to film where he didn't feel, I don't think, from what I've read, that he could carry this movie. He felt very much alone in that he was.
Oh, I heard on set he did everything to avoid even getting a shot. He'd start talking to people off to the side just to distract people, just to distract everybody from actually shooting. Because he would do anything to avoid being in front of the camera at that point. Apparently. Yeah.
I think when we get to discussing the end, that'll really put the tail on the donkey about what he was doing with this movie. Yeah. But Lou, in a great, amazing bit of special effects for the time, Lou tells him, 3 ghosts. We know how that plays out, that story. And he grabs him by the throat and hangs him out the building through the glass. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, this scene's kind of harrowing always to me.
This is not a kid's movie. Yeah.
It is not a kid's movie, and it is very intense, even for anybody watching this for the first time. Is like, wait, is this a comedy, or what am I watching?
Exactly.
A Christmas movie?
What am I supposed to feel?
Also, once again, though, a really great practical effect by DreamQuest Images.
Yeah.
That window, they pushes him through the window. There's so many good effects like that. So basically, he throws him out the window, and he falls, but ends up back in his office, and the phone is dialing a number. And who is that phone, that ghost phone dialing?
Claire.
Played by Karen Allen.
We meet her in a sec. She comes to the set after this call. They haven't talked in 15 years, but Karen Allen, I don't know, just Hollywood greatness. You just fall in
Name
love
dropping
with
again.
her.
I met her once too.
Oh, really? How did that go?
She was one of my top 5 80s crushes.
Yeah. Oh, she's I adore her too. Actually, I remember when I remember when I met her, and I just was like, I remember pointing to the photo of her in Starman and going, "God, you were so great in this movie as well. You were so great.
Yeah.
God, you're just so,
Starman. Listen.
Yeah, between Raiders and Starman and this, it's like, who didn't? Oh, and Animal House.
Yeah.
Who didn't have a crush on Karen Allen?
Oh, yeah.
She's like the sweetest person ever too when you meet her. She's just adorable. Like,
I don't know if she was still married to Stephen Bishop at this time.
Was she? I did not know that. The Stephen Bishop.
Song,
on.
That's Stephen Bishop. So the song that he got an Oscar nomination for from White Nights, Separate Lives.
Oh, I forgot he wrote that song. Yeah.
He didn't sing it. That was Phil Collins and I forgot who.
Marilyn. Marilyn. I forget her last name. Yeah.
Yeah, but he wrote that about their divorce.
Wow. Oh my God! How heartbreaking.
Yeah, sucks.
So, speaking of heartbreaking, they haven't spoken in 15 years, and she comes to the set, and right as he's like, they can't get these antlers on a mouse. So
yeah, the super glue won't work. Have you tried Staples?
Exactly. And so she sees this, but still, there's so many times when he is such an asshole that you're wondering, like, why is she standing here? Like, she's
Yeah.
Polly Pureheart. She is a sweetheart. She's working
She is so
with the
forgiving of
homeless.
everything. Yeah.
And that's part of it.
Nobody could be that nice.
Yeah. We'll pause and have, like, relationship advice for people in movies. A little segment we do.
Yeah.
Claire, this guy is clearly no good for you. You need a little more self-esteem.
There's a reason you left him.
Exactly. 15 years later, don't go back to the old well. Don't go back to what didn't work. Find another guy.
Girl, you can do better. You can do better, girlfriend.
This guy,
you don't need Frank Cross.
He clearly cannot show emotion. He clearly cannot put you above, his career desires. But if that happened, we wouldn't have a movie, I guess.
Yeah, she'd have been gone already. Most people in reality would be gone after this moment.
I've called up enough ex-girlfriends after 15 years. It doesn't play out like this.
So, funny story. I actually was watching this when I messaged my now wife after I had met her 12 years prior.
Wow.
And was very much a Frank Cross type in my career. Not, yelling at, widows or anything that bad, but very much career oriented. But this movie was on Christmas Eve when I reached out to my now wife to see if, after, 12 some years, and I wished her Merry Christmas, and we've been married for 10 years.
Wow. That's an emotional connection right there. That's amazing.
You never, and that's why this is one of my favorite Christmas movies. You never know how people change or if, until you ask. Now, I would very much take Anthony's advice and don't go texting your ex-girlfriends. That's just not a good idea on Christmas, or just put the bottle down and put on some TV or something.
It hasn't worked for me, Joe, but maybe I need to keep trying. Maybe that's I need to text all the ex-girlfriends.
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't cast that wide net. It was just a different situation for us, and I was lucky. But I would say that Frank's scared to his core, and at his core isn't a bad person. And that's what she gets back out of him as he learns these lessons thanks to these ghosts.
Yeah. And so she gives him a card, and she works at this homeless shelter. So we've established she's a wonderful person. And you're right, Joe, kind of just a completely polar opposite with him, seemingly.
And talk about screenwriting 101, petting the dog right away with this character.
Oh, yeah. I swear when you see her, it's almost like they slathered Vaseline on the lens. She is just, so soft-focused.
Right. You see how caring she is from the get-go. And she works for a homeless shelter. Oh my God! Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a dinner scene. Bryce is coming in with Preston, and Frank starts hallucinating, starts seeing crazy things, eyeballs in drinks, waiters catching on fire, and so he freaks out. He's really losing it.
And he says the worst joke of the most poorest taste, even for this time period.
Yep.
He says, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were Richard Pryor," in reference to when Richard Pryor set himself on fire in a drug-fueled rage at one point back in early 1980, I think, or something, or 1981. And I can't tell. Once again, that sounds almost like a Michael O'Donoghue line or a possible Bill Murray improv. I can't tell which one.
They probably high-fived each other. Who knows? Because that is a real. That's a rough. That is a rough line.
That's a groaner. Yeah, it was too soon. It's too soon now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's poor.
It's like walking up to. He might as well have walked up to a paraplegic and said, "I'm sorry, I thought you were Jim Stacy."
Yeah, it's that cruel a line, and it really takes you out of the movie. I'm all for dark humor. That's a bridge too far for me, but whatever. So he gets in the cab, and who is driving this cab?
It is Buster Poindexter.
It is David.
What's the other name he went by? David Johansen.
David Johansen.
It's Israel. Of the New York Dolls.
Of the New York Dolls. Yeah, the great punk rock band New York Dolls. No relation to Scarlett, from what I understand. Johansen.
No.
No.
This was apparently supposed to be played by Sam Kinison, and I would have loved to have seen that. Honestly, that would have been really interesting. Screaming Sam Kinison playing this part.
Yeah, but Bill Murray pulled favors again. And got his buddy the part.
That's right. They were friends, apparently. They were pals. They probably
somebody got a lead pipe to the knee, No, this is going to be David Johansen.
In all fairness, when you see Sam Kinison play off like Rodney Dangerfield and Back to School, you're kind of like, you needed somebody a little more like dark and muted to rub the salt on the wounds versus loud.
Yeah.
He's too big a presence for this movie that already has a lot of big presence.
He would have been like
distracting.
We're going back in the past now.
It's too much. I agree. David Johansen is great in this role. I'm a big New York Dolls fan, so of course he did a lot of acting.
Likewise, yeah.
And so anyway, he takes him back to 1955, as aforementioned, and his father gives him what for Christmas, Joe?
Veal.
Which is, hey, thanks.
You know what? Now that we're this age, that's a really nice gift.
Yeah,
I know.
It's frozen still when he gives it to him, right? That's what it.
Yeah,
that's that's 5 pounds of high quality veal. I'm like, in the market now, that's like 100. That's a really nice gift.
It is.
Maybe not for a kid, but if somebody came to my house and said, "I got you 5 pounds of veal," I would be like, "You're staying for dinner, man."
But he wanted a Twain set.
Yeah.
Twain's.
Thank the angel.
Yeah.
This is a drunken working class bizarro Christmas story. It is 1955 at the Murray household, as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe this is what it looked like for all of our parents. I don't know.
Well, look, she's pregnant. She's chain smoking. They're like 2 feet from the TV.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He lights up, and then it's just like, go get a job, and it's Christmas Eve, and he falls asleep, and
he's like, if you want a train set, maybe you better get a job. Yeah.
Right. But before they go in, David Johansen is like, when Attila Hun saw the mom, Niagara Falls. Attila the Hun crying. The fact that Attila the Hun had gone through this process is just sublime. I would have loved to have seen that movie.
That's how bad Murray's character is. He is one of the worst people ever.
And we see where Frank's bitterness came from early on.
But do we?
The seed of it.
Do we? Is getting veal on Christmas really? I get it, but to your point, how different is this from anyone's upbringing in 1955? I would say that what's the kid from Christmas Story?
Ralphie.
Ralphie had a harder upbringing than this.
Ralphie's dad still got him the gun.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Well,
Ralphie's dad wasn't like, here, this is sausage, You're not getting a BB gun.
It's not, right. He was too scared to tell his dad about breaking the glasses and all that. But yeah, you're talking about, that's also a different time. I think that's not.
It's a decade before.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you're talking about, this is not Norman Rockwell's America.
Yeah.
This is the other part of America where they're getting by, they're blue collar people, and you're seeing this. Well, right from the beginning, he's not somebody that got hugged a lot as a kid. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's
Gotcha.
the first step. But then you take the next step and you see him at this Christmas party working Christmas Eve. Then you've got this like Mad Men vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he only works in the mailroom at that point. He's like still delivering mail while everybody's having drinks and partying and sitting on the copy machine with their butts,
Yeah. But
out and
in this
whatever.
scene, the most powerful thing to me personally hits. And I connected to this. So there's this girl, Tina, who is photocopying her butt on the copiers and giving away his gift. I mean, she's a giver, right? In the Christmas spirit. And, this chick is totally all over him. They're there and witnessing the history, and nobody can see them. And he's yelling at himself, a double with a wig who walks by him. He's like, what are you doing? Go back and talk to her. And I was like, I mean, how many times in our own lives, if I could go back to any point in history of my life, there would be some chick there probably with a photocopy of her butt saying, Anthony, and I'm just like, for no reason blowing this chick off.
Yeah.
I've known you for 25 years, and I feel like you need a hug right now because, I've seen that happen to you many times. And I feel like I was the ghost of Christmas past being like, what are you doing? What's the matter with you?
I know.
But, as the ghost says, not that one, Frank.
Yeah. And he's right, but I just thought of that. That's some good writing. That kind of thought. Really.
It is real, yeah.
Yeah, that makes it real. I agree.
And then his encounter with Claire on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Oh, when they first meet, yeah.
Touching.
Yeah. Well, he lies to the blonde and says, "Nah, Chinese food. They're putting. Yeah, I don't really eat that stuff." And then he runs into Claire and is like, "You want to go get Chinese food?" So the lies, the things that we have lied about, is for no reason whatsoever in our lives. Which is a funny thing men do around women. Like, do you like this kind of salad? Oh, this is my favorite salad ever. I've never had the salad before in my life.
Yeah.
If it gets me 5 more minutes with you, okay.
When you care about someone, you tell little lies to them, at least in the beginning. You tell bigger lies later.
Whatever it takes to get it's like getting a job. Whatever it takes to get your foot in the door, get that interview.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, he gets ahead to the door.
Yeah,
with her,
which is why she calls him Lumpy later on, of course.
Yeah,
which is cute.
It's kind of
so
cute. It's endearing.
It's a meet cute, is what got another holiday movie. I absolutely hate The Holiday, but that's where you learn that term.
We get a Hallmark movie there for a minute, and it works. Woody Allen Hallmark movie, and it works. So anyway, then we flash forward to them as a couple at Christmas. He gives her what, Joe?
He gives her Ginsu knives.
Yeah, from the heart.
They can cut through a can.
Yeah. Right.
Cut through a tin
really
can.
a great tender gift to give your live-in girlfriend who's been in the bathtub smoking a joint. Comes out, here's your knives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really setting the mood. And as a side note, I've never been brave enough to ever give a woman knives, ever.
Oh, bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I gave a girlfriend a blender one time, That was with the sharpest blade ever. I'm like, this thing can make anything.
And she gave you the Kama Sutra.
That's right. She gave me the Kama Sutra. I was like, oh, okay. I'm getting the wrong
and Claire gives him the Kama Sutra, right? Yeah. And I hear if there's a certain spot, again, this is not a movie for kids at all.
Yeah. Although I saw this scene when I was 12, actually.
Oh,
yeah,
we all saw this
kind
as
of,
a kid.
I kind of almost thought, oh, I'm glad my parents aren't with me right now. Because I don't know what's going on.
Kind of a Caddyshack throwback. He's making her bark like a dog.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that, yeah.
So that's a cute, sexy scene. So they're definitely a little counterculture and a little freaky. It's the 70s at that point.
I will say these flashbacks are amazing. They look amazingly like their time periods for that time, especially. And I even thought that back when I saw it as a kid, that it was amazing how all these time travel scenes, they look like really authentic, I will say.
Yeah.
It looks like the 70s and 50s. Anyway.
Yeah, you
great
feel
set
transported.
design.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so the Ghost of Christmas Past says, know who you are, what you want, and what's going on. You don't know any of this stuff. And of course, he's like, I know all of this stuff.
Well, because of the Bingo the Dog thing, because he dumps Claire before that. He tells Claire, sorry, I got to focus on my career.
Because he gets invited to dinner by the network.
By Lou.
By John Forsythe.
Yeah.
John Forsythe, who we see younger and alive.
Mistress, personal assistant. Me, you, my wife. Your wife's in Palm Springs. Well, it's me and you. Like that madman.
Yeah. Classy. It's a satire. It's a satire of just the industry and big business and all of that at its core. But before we go to the whole dog scene, okay. So anyway, he goes to see Claire at the homeless shelter, and we see a bunch of bums come up. This is a movie of nothing but cameos, right and left. Michael J. Pollard. Right, and Ramsey.
Michael J. Pollard, Power, and Ramsey. This is like a year after she died, too. Actually, she died right. She did this movie called "Throw Mama from the Train" a year before, or it came out a year before. Yeah,
and she was in Goonies, directed by Donner. There is that scene though. He pours like a whole glass of vodka and he splashes the tab, and the way Bill Murray just taps the tab into that glass of vodka to justify it.
Yeah.
Now, tab, nobody knows what tab is anymore.
Right.
But it's these little subtle things that Bill Murray does that makes the character his. Like, that's just hilarious. Like, a whole glass of vodka and a splash of tab.
I almost wonder if that was his drink of choice at that time period, too.
Probably was.
It looked too real the way he was pouring it.
Yeah. So anyways, he goes back to the set, and then now we see... I mean, he's having these freakouts every time he comes back to the real world. He's out of his element. He seems kind of more comfortable in the flashbacks, but when he comes back, he's so jolted that he just loses control, and everyone around him can see it because we're trying to get this Scrooge live special out on the air. It's Christmas Eve, right? And he comes back and sees Bryce directing, and he's further losing his grip on his career and his status. And then the Ghost of Christmas Present comes. And Joe, who plays the Ghost of Christmas Present?
The brilliant Carol Kane.
Yeah.
Who is just, there's a great Random Rules with her on the AV Club. You could just hear what a delight she is, like in her answers. She played Andy Kaufman's wife on Taxi. She has a great cameo on a Seinfeld where she gets hit by the pocket organizer. She's just, I bet she's as sweet as a person as she looks to be in these interviews. But she plays this fairy, this just demented, psychopathic fairy.
It's a very violent interaction between these two.
Yeah.
She's hitting him. She even injured his lip during production.
I think didn't Donner tell her she's basically Glinda the Good Witch from Wizard of Oz, but, like an asshole version or a bitch version.
Yeah, there was something about how she had to rehearse nonstop for these ballerina scenes, but with the understanding that she was going to be actually replaced by a body double for the close-ups. And so she tried and she tried and tried and rehearsed and practiced. And finally, when she thought she got it as best as she could for certain shots, the coordinator saw her and was like, "You're just awful at this." And he said, "You just film it this way. It's so much funnier." And Donner took his advice. And so you see her do these dances when you meet her for the first time, where she's trying to do this sugar plum thing, and it's just demented. But that's just because she could not get it right.
And that is part of the weirdness. This is part of the dark element of this film. It's been dark all around, but you have a character who looks like she should be adoring and helpful, but is really probably the worst of the ghosts. She's violent, and she's not mic'd well. I mean, you can't really hear a lot of what she's saying. It's a bit garbled, but you just see her beating up on Murray, and I just picture Donner like, let's take that take again. Just frustrated with Murray, just enjoying seeing him getting hit. I've done that. So when filming stuff. But anyway, so then she takes him to the present. She sees, or they see his brother, his younger brother, at the lamest Christmas party ever with the worst trivia people of all time. This is not the trivia team you want at trivia night at the bar.
And one of them is, can I point out, Wendy Malick from Just Shoot Me and Dream On.
Yeah.
And
Dream On and Hot in Cleveland.
The great. I think she kept her name in the movie. But yeah, the worst trivia pursuit Christmas game.
Yeah, we also get another Murray brother.
That's right. Is it Joel Murray?
Yeah, it's Joel Murray.
I think. So we have John and Joel in the same scene here.
So even more Freudian whatnot.
I think wasn't Joel on Mad Men. Sorry.
Yeah, I think he was, yeah. I mean, these guys are everywhere. The Murrays are, Bill Murray he's the biggest star, but each one of his brothers, except for maybe John or the youngest one, is a star in their own right. Awesome character actors. So, but anyway, so then he finds one of the bums frozen, and this is the Pollard bum. Yeah.
Are we skipping ahead?
Yeah, but when he goes to the homeless shelter, how they mistake him because they're all smashed for
That's
Richard
so weird.
Burton.
I never understood this part, but yeah, it's so bizarre.
And it's a throwback from a Saturday Night Live skit.
Maybe I didn't think.
So Bill Murray did this skit where he did Richard Burton, and so they're calling him Dick. And before that, even you see Bobcat Goldthwait donating blood for money because his wife has thrown him out. And he passes out due to his hypotension, and he gets mugged, passed out in garbage. I mean, that's just another step towards his down. That's just his downward spiral. And then he gets accosted by the bums who think he's Richard Burton, and he's doing, after the night of the iguana, I just felt a real connection to you.
Oh yeah, that's right. Can I? Yeah, Michael J. Pollard says that great line. I'm sorry, Dick, but after Exodus 1 and 2 and Night of the Iguana, we just had to come up to you and tell you.
That's a great impression. That's great. And then Claire comes, and they have a hard time locating food and supplies. And Frank Cross is like, "What is with you people? You can't get your act together." And she said they're volunteers on Christmas. What is with you? And he's scared to his core. He needs somebody. He needs her, but he just can't get his head out of his own ass.
And he's discombobulated. He's been going through some traumatic stuff. I'm not taking his side, but yeah, he goes instinctively to her. Like, am I losing my mind? Who can I talk to in this world that will understand me and explain everything and ground me? Then once he gets there, he is nothing but critical. He lapses back to his own asshole shelf. Probably even the most asshole-ish scene in this whole movie is basically him saying, let's leave this homeless shelter on Christmas Eve. He gives zero fucks at that point. He's at his darkest, right?
True. This is where he says bah humbug to her.
Right. Brush them off, Claire. Brush them off. They'll take you down if you don't, take care of yourself. And it's like, well, that's a nice attitude on Christmas. And he says, well, bah humbug. And then he leaves and he runs into Michael J. Pollard, who asks him for money to heat his place up. And he says, I blew it all on Liz, another, Richard Burton joke. But when he sees Herman, his name is Herman, after he sees Alfred Woodard's family.
Oh.
But he sees Grace's family first, and he sees how happy they are, even though they've got nothing.
He sees the boy, and there's something special about her kid. You know what I mean? Little Calvin is longing for something.
I have a kid on the spectrum. I think I wonder if he's on the spectrum.
But his Richard Donner has his Free Africa thing that he did in a lot of his movies in the 80s and apartheid. And there's a lot of these posters, and you see them throughout the movie. It's another throwback to the time period.
Oh,
yeah,
that's in the kitchen scene. Yeah, right. And Claire with Grace's mom is sitting right in front of it on the table at the kitchen table. Right. Yeah. I noticed that. I didn't notice that before.
It's also in the director's booth for the special when they're going in there. He's got these. He's always. I think this is before Lethal Weapon 2, but Lethal Weapon 2, apartheid is a huge part of that plot, or it's right after. But he's got his little political statements.
That's right. Diplomatic immunity.
It's been revoked.
So then he finds Herman frozen, literally with icicles hanging off his nose.
This is heartbreaking, I think, too. Yeah, this scene.
So, Joe, tell us about this scene.
So by this point, he's been peppered with physical abuse by Carol Kane, by the ghost of, he's been hit with a toaster. His ears have been covered. His lips have been pulled. He's been smacked around. And now he's he's in this little frozen subterranean burrow where, it's freezing, and he sees Herman frozen to death.
Do you remember the line he says here, though?
Yeah.
He says, "Where am I, Trump Tower?"
That's right. And
too soon.
It's never too soon for that guy. He's got this. That's a great line. It's definitely a Murray line. He's got Herman bundled up trying to stay warm, whose life he could have saved and failed to do so. And the guilt is starting to really chip away at him, and he's having this full-blown anxiety, panic attack, trying to break the door down. Like, why did you stay with Claire? Like, blaming the victim, of course, and it's just this big. The manic state is spreading over before he busts down the door and spills into the Christmas special set. And the wheels have finally come off the wagon, realizing that he could have helped somebody and failed to do so. And it's these little things, not helping Calvin, not giving Grace time off, treating people like crap, is finally, resulted in someone's death.
I think, too, this also hints at the darker movie that probably was, that we didn't see, that we still haven't seen. I even tried to look up deleted scenes from this movie, and I couldn't find any.
Yeah.
I can't find the original script.
There's a whole other movie lying on the cutting room floor. There's 2 or 3 movies.
And that's why, because this scene is so freaking dark. Oh my God. It's one of the darker moments in the movie. And just like the hanging out the window scene, it all hints at a darker film.
But I want to call out the Michael Chapman cinematography. Michael Chapman,
he was great. I know
list
him.
Goes on.
Not know him. I know his work.
Yeah, just
Raging
fantastic. Bull. Worked with Reitman a bunch. Yeah, just list goes on. But this particular scene had very Burton-esque notes to it. Just visually speaking, and with the Elfman music, and with sort of the over-the-top Frozen makeup.
Yeah,
to me, it looks like Batman and Robin, like a deleted scene where Mr. Freeze comes in to teach everybody about the true meaning of Christmas puns, and he's like, "Have a cool Yule," and Michael Pollard just happens to be a bum that gets killed. Frozen.
I don't know about this Freeze guy. I don't know.
And so anyway, he goes back to set, and he's even losing his mind even more. Yeah. And so Glover's character is full on directing since Frank has clearly been gone. The weird thing about this movie is all of this takes place almost in real time. It's basically Christmas Eve. And in this time, Bobcat Goldthwait, since mid-afternoon, has lost his job, lost his wife, and is really trying to become a full-on alcoholic. But every time he tries to take a drink, a cab splashes him, what have you. So he's really trying to hit rock bottom within 12 hours.
His character arc is very clearly defined in this movie, I will say. I mean, you know, literally, I mean, you see the rise. Yeah. It's almost like a perfect rise of a supervillain kind of thing.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's the sequel. Or I guess, no, he's redeemed at the end. But anyway, it all of this feels a little rushed because a lot has to happen in a few hours here. But you get a sense of the passage of time, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's not just like in his mind and he's back where he was. It's like he's gone for hours and the world goes on, you know, despite him. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so Bobcat becomes a drunk in a few hours, homeless. But then he goes, so Frank goes back. This is when we get into the Ghost of Christmas Future part. Frank goes back to his office to have a drink. And then what happens?
So the elevator doors open when they send him back up because he's kind of a manic mess. And he sees the Ghost of Christmas Future for the special, and he flips out and says, "Come on, take me."
Yeah.
And they're like, what's Bryce? So like in a span of 12 hours, this douchebag has taken over the set and is running the show and is enjoying and relishing the, you know, Frank Cross's withering power. And then we should probably give a lot of respect to the censor on set who is like physically abused step by step.
Oh, yeah. It's a running joke.
She's assaulted.
Yes, that poor woman.
There's a great line about like the solid gold dancers and what they're wearing, and I could barely see the nipples.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
You know, she's just a total like in a neck brace and head trauma, has a concussion, but she's working because this is a live Christmas special on Christmas Eve. So he goes back up. I think that's when he does the tab and the vodka bit. And before the Ghost of Christmas Future can grab him, Bobcat shows up to shoot and kill him. Probably a murder-suicide waiting to happen. And again, very dark film.
But it's Bobcat, and that's the weird thing. If you're going to have somebody come in with a shotgun and not have them take it seriously, not have the audience really, really take it seriously, it's Bobcat. But you do feel that his comeuppance is nigh.
It's justified.
Yeah, like I believe Bobcat could shoot him.
Yeah.
He's dodging bullets, and he hits they're not Emmys. He calls them my babies.
Hello, rabbit. That's what he says.
He shoots his babies, and then he's like, "Oh, my babies!" Like all his Emmys on the shelf get blown up. That's what he really cares about. That's the only time you really see emotion from him at this point in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, all he has is fear and panic. He dives into the elevator, and there is the Ghost of Christmas Future, the actual one for his purposes. And he's like, hey, back off, big guy. That's thinking this is the actor again. And he opens up the robe, and he sees these like tortured souls, and he's thinking, well, is that our makeup department? Wow, we're really good. And it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
did we do that?
And he is zipped.
They're like...
No, sorry.
I was just going to pause and say, so those tortured souls to me look like Hellraiser Cenobites if the Jim Henson puppet shop had made them. I'm not sure what to get from that. Am I supposed to be scared or grotesque?
To me, they reminded me of the souls of Freddy.
Yeah.
But they're comedic. I don't know. It's a good effect, but it's kind of like, it is the tone of this movie. Horrific comedy.
Yeah. Right. And they go to visit Calvin, who's in a mental institution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like a little rough. I'm like, why? He's that bad off?
He can't talk. I mean, come on now. He just can't talk.
In a padded room, so who knows what he's done.
Yes.
Maybe he's responsible for killing Frank Cross if Bobcat hadn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he still hasn't aged any. The kid hasn't aged any in this moment either, even though it's supposed to be the future, I guess. But I guess it's not that far off,
It's the near future. And, this poor kid, I mean, it's already established that Grace, his assistant, there's not enough money for this operation he needs. And so it is a mental thing, but yet there's an operation. I'm a little confused about that. But this is a direct consequence in some way of what Frank should have done. He should have taken care of Grace as his employee. He should have somehow gotten involved because he has the resources to help her son.
Oh, and we have to bring up the fact that Alfre Woodard, plays Grace in this movie so well, I have to say. She's such a great actress.
She's great, though. And so anyway, and Claire becomes a homeless-hating bitch because of Lumpy here, Frank, in the next scene. Really satirically and almost unbelievably so. We see her at some luncheon with her high society friends, and a homeless guy comes in and she just poo-poos him. And it's like,
it's kids. It's worse than
it's little kids.
At the window.
We're hungry. Yeah. And she's like, oh, can we do something about that? And she's all like made up and old and like thanks Lumpy for the good advice. And he's like, oh shit, that was that was the worst thing I could have ever told somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a creepy and sad moment. I mean, it's so
right.
It's just all of it. You know.
It's quite a transformation for Claire, but they do tie it to what he said earlier.
Brush him off. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll get to that in just a second. But then, just like the original novella, we see his funeral. Basically, Frank sees his coffin being burned, and then his feet are on fire.
This is scary, too. I mean, this looks like a horror film. It looks like a Tim Burton film, like you say. I think Tim Burton secretly directed this movie.
Second Unit or something. I don't know. His DNA is very much in this somehow. It's the sum of the parts.
He wasn't there, but he was there still somehow. I don't know, you know?
But it wasn't enough to, like, Bill Murray, he walks up, he sees his sister-in-law by the coffin. He's like, oh, my brother. Oh, man, yeah, I really should do better. I got to be wait, there's my brother. Oh, everything's okay. And then he realizes, no, he is damned. He is going to a bad place. And he has his come to Jesus moment, for the lack of a better term, where nobody gives a shit. The only person there is there probably out of obligation. His brother, no one's there for him. No one cares. And he's being cremated and tossed aside. And he's of no value to society because he provided no value to society.
Yeah. But I want to pause here. You know, okay, for me, this scene works. This movie works. It works, right? But I don't believe the stakes are here at the end. I don't think the payoff, this Ghost of Christmas future, this really needs to appeal, this vision to who Frank is. And Frank is a super selfish person. I wanted to see a little bit more of a Charles Foster Kane pathos misery here. He sees himself washed up. Alternatively, let's say he sees himself washed up, right? And then to your point, Joe, the futility of his life's work. I don't quite believe his transformation just seeing his funeral. Now, that's the book. I get it.
I agree. I feel like it feels forced in a J.J. Abrams kind of way. J.J. Abrams?
Yeah. It's not, look, I mean, the execution is, I don't want to say it's lazy, but the execution could have probably been better, because what you have is somebody he could have saved and didn't. Then you see the future, somebody he could have saved and didn't. Somebody whose life he made worse who was doing good. And then he's going to, I mean, it's just, and like you said, it just tracks the book, right? This is how Dickens did it, and they're just trying to stick to the script. They could have probably thought outside the box a bit.
I am sure, having said all this, though, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm sure, having said all this, I'm sure there's stuff on the cutting room floor and that was in the script that explained it better.
Yeah.
And had more of a come to Jesus kind of thing going on with it.
If you could Build-A-Bear this movie with what's on the cutting room floor, you know what I mean?
This movie's running time is 97 minutes. That means it was literally probably edited down from like 129, I imagine.
I want to release the Snyder cut on this. We need somebody to go in and take whatever's left of Scrooge to make a better movie. It's there. I'm convinced.
Well, it's the same company. It's Warner.
I think everyone has said who's been interviewed about this movie, there's a lot of this movie that got cut out that would have made it a much better movie. But I think that they were on a tight budget, not a tight budget, but they were on a tight timeline with a decent budget to get a Christmas movie out in time. And Donner just decided he was going to deliver come high or hell water, despite Bill Murray's best efforts to
Scrooge the production,
to be reined in by his own ego.
Yeah. I think for me, alternatively, like, what if instead of Claire in that scene with the orphans, what if Claire marries Bryce? I mean, it's a comedy. We can stretch that far. Or what if we truly see him failing at his job, the one thing he loves, and he loses Claire again. You know, there's just infinite possibilities. I mean, it works. It works okay.
You could have had a 2001 moment, you know, where he's alone in a room just staring at himself in the mirror as an old man. And the fact that he's alone and eating.
And seeing Bryce on TV winning humanitarian awards.
There you go.
You know,
there you go. Perfect.
With Daryl Hannah around him. The greatest TV executive to ever live. And really, Frank Cross is just a footnote like Lou is.
And Bryce still looks young and only has shades of gray compared to Frank looking withered and old. And
yeah, there could have been another kick. I mean, that's fair. There could have been another kick to the nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, they set up Bryce so well, and then there really isn't the payoff. He's just there in the middle to antagonize him. And I think what really would have gotten this character is to see Bryce succeed, see himself fail, and lose Claire again, and maybe to Bryce, like I said, but anything other than just seeing his own death. I get that. You know, that's his mortality. But there was so much room to play in here. I think we agree.
They should have had more between the death before his coffin and Claire. Probably in between there should have been a lot more.
Just more. Just a little bit more is what's needed here. Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't have used Claire as a MacGuffin for torturing him. I think showing her being a heartless socialite was a good, but you know, the thing that I think you're hitting very well on is his career was his most important thing. And if they had something with like Bryce getting this big award and saying, well, who was that guy before you? No one really remembers that guy.
Yeah.
It's all for naught.
It would have been like, nobody gave a shit about you. Nobody cared about you. The people who cared are in these horrible places because of you. And all you had to do was just, you know, try just a little bit. Yeah. But he does get that. He does get that second chance anyway.
I mean, it's a Christmas Story. We know the beats. We know how this goes, and so it must go in that way.
This movie was already going Bob Fosse dark, though.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't get an
talking Bob Fosse, all that jazz dark.
One of my favorite top 5 movies. We don't see Frank Cross in a body bag.
That's another movie about a guy obsessed with his career, you know.
Yeah, with a more with a much darker tone at the end.
Yeah.
But with this, you what did Michael McDonough say? McDonough said, what is this, the Jim Jones hour?
Yeah.
He was so
when we get to this,
by all of this.
So he comes
when
back.
We get back out of the coffin and he's I'm alive.
Yes.
And you hear Handel's Messiah.
We get almost a bipolar return. This time he's manic, but he's manic with the joy of Christmas. Scarily so, almost.
Yeah. This is the movie's big network, 1976 network moment.
Yeah. And before we get to that scene, he comes back with a gun in his face. It's Bobcat holding the gun. So I guess he was only gone for a few minutes. I don't know. Anyway, so he's got this jubilant vigor, and then he throws Bobcat's character, Elliot, into the elevator. And I swear that's Bobcat doing his own stunts.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
When he flicks him on the ear earlier in the movie, too, I think that looks real.
Yeah, people were injured on this film for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So then Elliot and Frank he goes to the control room as they're filming this live Christmas special, and Elliot pulls a shotgun on everybody in the control room, and I was just like, the crime's being committed in this scene. But anyway, Frank rushes down to the set, just interrupts the program. And Joe, what does he do? What does he say?
He basically grabs him, gives him those butterfly kisses on his tummy, or whatever those are called. And
Zerberts is the medical term.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm alive and so are you. He hires him back, gives him a raise, and says, let's go have some fun and fix Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, he realizes, like, you know, what kind of asshole makes people work on a live TV special on Christmas Eve? And one of the cameramen says, you. And he's like, you know, 10 hours ago, I would have fired you, but you're right. I'm an asshole, and I'm going to fix that starting right now. And he makes out with one of the dancers under the mistletoe and says, that's nice, but there's been better. And I'm like, you know, that's never sat right with me. That's one of the shittiest things you could ever say to a woman that you've just kissed on live. It's on live TV. That was good, but I've had better.
And that's Bill Murray. Yeah. That's Bill Murray ad-libbing. I just think that's Bill Murray being himself. I don't know.
And then
Yeah.
David Johansen brings Claire to the set, while Bobcat has everybody in the director's booth hostage. And they keep rolling, and they're filming this manic meltdown that was totally unscripted, pissed off the writers of the movie, pissed off, Donner just said, we're just going to go with it.
Yeah.
And they let him do his shtick, and everybody thought it was such a horrible ending and that it wasn't going to go well, but it really tested very well with the audiences.
And you can tell you've got all the people on set, and I think they all just gather around out of curiosity. Literally the people, I think, on set, the crew, the actors, everyone just kind of, I don't know if they were directed to do this, but Bill Murray is just going off of this unscripted ad-lib thing. O'Donoghue is like ripping his hair out. Donner is like, what is going on here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To Joe's point.
To quote what Joe was saying earlier, Michael O'Donoghue apparently did say, like at the end of it all, like, what was this? The Jim Jones hour?
Exactly.
And you've got this great John Houseman cameo, and I think he died a few weeks after filming this. John Houseman. Yeah, it's a good John Houseman voice.
He has the monocle drop, like, whoa.
And you've got Preston, you've got Robert Mitchum cracking open a beer, and the cats are pawing the TV at the mice. And he's like, see, I got this right. And sure enough, there's like 4 channels dedicated to animal holiday stuff for your pets during Christmas. So again, way ahead of its
This movie predicted it.
Yeah.
That was his big idea. That was earlier in the film. That was his big idea. And Bill Murray's character was like, nah, that's.
It predicted the nipple slipping.
Oh, yeah.
This movie did.
That's right. And, Buddy Hackett and Jamie Farr just.
Yeah.
TV's Jamie Farr from MASH.
Poor bastards. Just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And he gets into this. Christmas is a time where anybody can turn their lives around and you can be a good person again. You just have to take that leap and the miracle can happen for you, and it's happening for me. I just have to make that leap. And he just goes bonkers. He's spitting and talking and speaking in tongues, and then Claire shows up and it's all okay.
He's having a nervous breakdown, clearly.
I mean, you can see him crying.
Yeah, the critics, that's what the critics are like, this homeless guy died. He's still a dick, and Claire ditches all of the people, which she wouldn't do earlier, to go be by his side. It's kind of like a stretch, but whatever.
Bobcat's got people at gunpoint,
right?
Tied
at gunpoint.
Up. How should I feel at this point?
I think the last part of this movie was directed by Sidney Lumet. I think Richard Donner was on a Christmas vacation at this point.
Right. They were all screaming Attica at the end. But it's
it was a true network moment, I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. But with Christmas
I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Yeah, exactly.
But he keeps it, but you know what? He could, because of that Bill Murray charm, which the charm it forgives so much. I mean, think about every time Bill Murray, like, he's like electrocuting that poor college kid in Ghostbusters at the beginning and telling the cute girl. And you're like, this guy is such a piece of shit. But you still like him. He's just got that charisma.
Yeah.
And he has turned it around. He has decided, to the point that his turnaround has helped Calvin speak again. And I think that really is what makes it okay.
Yeah. That's the Tiny Tim moment.
I have to counter-argue something I heard Quentin Tarantino say in an interview.
Oh, here we go.
Because he said that every Bill Murray movie in the 80s, he had this... They clean him up by the end of the movie, and they make him, like... But the thing is, this is the only movie that actually does that, I think, technically.
Groundhog Day.
Ghostbusters, he's still the same guy at the end of the movie. Groundhog Day was 1992. Quentin Tarantino said every Bill Murray movie in the 80s.
You're right.
He was confusing it.
Sorry.
He brings up Groundhog Day, which technically is 1991 or 2.
Groundhog Day is technically 1993, Jordan.
Don't get me started on Quentin Tarantino and his foot thing, but trust me, if you don't, I mean, you've seen the Tarantino movie, he's got this foot fetish.
Yeah.
Like this dirty foot. It's just really disgusting. But look, you're talking about Ghostbusters, The Razor's Edge doesn't, a disaster of a film. Little Shop of Horrors is a cameo. Scrooged, and then Ghostbusters. He didn't make many movies in the 80s, so I don't know what he's talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He had a big gap, 4 years in the 80s.
Stripes,
Yeah, Stripes. He was the same guy at the end of Stripes too, as well. I mean, he wasn't like kinder and gentler at the end of Stripes, like he's just like the way Quentin's talking about it.
Well, he all he was the leader who finally got his shit together, who had them all along. Like
but, that was it. But he was still the same.
Exactly.
He still treated women the same way.
The Aunt Jemima treatment.
Yeah. I want to say something about this scene. I don't like this final diatribe. It screams of ad-libbing. He repeats himself. I get it. It's not as well said. It should have been scripted. But here's what happens, and this is what's so conflicting, and I think this is what makes it a holiday classic to today. We're watching Bill Murray's redemption. His absence from film. He had to turn this movie around, and I don't know if they shot this sequentially, but this scene is him really exercising his charisma and his chops like a superpower. Does it completely work? No, it's not that great, but it works despite that, because you see something very rare in film, an unplanned fourth wall break, right? He's literally talking to the audience, trying to get the audience to sing Put a Little Love in Your Heart, at the end of this, and literally you see the cast and crew and the actors just fixated on Murray, and we're fixated on it, and it's clumsy, but that charisma.
But that's on Donner. Donner's the one telling them it's all about Bill. Put the spotlight on Bill. Let's just all get in on it with Bill. And everyone's just kind of like, all right, okay, we're here for the ride. It's his movie. And I think that's how the entire cast kind of felt, because, I mean, pardon the, there's no better way to say this, but there is a ton of female support in this cast, but there's no real male supporting. They're all like basically barely in this movie. Bobcat Goldthwait, Robert Mitchum, Glover, all these guys are just barely in this movie. The females, I think Carol Kane gets probably the most time with him as one of the ghosts. Karen Allen, Alfred Wood.
Underwritten Karen Allen. I mean, her scenes are good, but there's so much more to her character. I wanted more. I want to see more of them.
But I don't think she was. I don't think the movie is wired to allow that. I think it's all about him. And yeah, that is another flaw. This is a flawed movie, as I said from the beginning. I still love it. I think it's a great, funny movie. It's dark. It's a change up from all the other Christmas stuff that's out there. But it does have that tale of, it's never too late to get your shit together and do right for the world. Now, how he gets there is choppy and messy, but so is life.
Yeah.
But he gets there, and he helps little Calvin along the way.
I will say, just a side note here, the most Christmassy thing that happened behind the scenes of this movie, apparently, was that the studio was not going to give the crew Christmas Day off when they were shooting this, and Richard Donner fired everybody, and then hired them back the next day, so they could all have off for Christmas with their families. I mean, like, you talk about the most Christmassy thing behind the scenes of the movie, just like that.
God bless us, everyone.
Donner,
really, God bless Richard Donner.
was apparently just a great guy. Everyone who worked with him really enjoyed working with him, and for better or for worse, he
had good energy apparently, and a great voice. Just really inspiring kind of voice, like deep like this.
Well, he did a really great roundtable. What was that? He did some show with Favreau that they had about 15 years ago.
Dinner with Five? Yeah.
Oh, Dinner for Five. I love that show. Yeah.
But Donner, he put out, in addition to Lethal Weapon, and he did Maverick, and he did Conspiracy Theory. The guy made great quality action films, and stepped out of his comfort. The Omen and Goonies. He stepped out of his comfort zone to make this movie. Again, I think he delivered. It's not his best work. It's not Bill Murray's best work. But as far as Christmas movies go, it really spares you a lot of the schlock and gives you a kind of a nice message with a different tone.
Yeah, and the dark humor helps a lot to make this stand out. I mean, why do you think this is a Christmas classic? Let's just call it. It's on every year. It's a very flawed film. It's a plane that lands after hitting a lot of turbulence that probably shouldn't have landed, but somehow through Donner's direction or Bill Murray's charisma, it lands.
Well, I think the song, like you said, that cover of Put a Little Love in Your Heart with Al Green and Annie Lennox, it's not even a Christmas song, but people play it now at Christmas time because of this movie. I think you can never underplay the power of, like you said, the soundtrack, Danny Elfman's soundtrack, and this song at the end of it just kind of ties it all together to give you an upbeat ending. So I think that's a part of it. I think that it's a Christmas Carol retold, kind of, handcuffs it to the holiday.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of Christmas movies that are just abysmal and easily forgotten.
Yeah.
But
the bar is low.
Yeah. Well, people like Bill Murray, period.
Yeah. I guess that's it. And it really is. I think the fourth wall breaking, I don't like it, but I think that rings for a lot of people, because literally he's doing, it's so meta, literally he's doing in the movie what his character was doing to the television show, which is so bizarre to watch. But I think that with the song, although I don't like it as much, that makes the movie for a lot of people. And Bill Murray's charisma.
It is, but take the foil, take Chevy Chase, right? Chevy Chase does a Christmas movie and has no sense of humor about himself. Bill Murray gets abused this entire film. It's not like he's unscathed and steps into the limelight. He is beaten up and pulled through the. Whereas Chevy Chase Clark Griswold is an asshole.
Yeah.
And his redemption is never there and never believable. I mean, look at Christmas Vacation.
Yeah.
I'll just get on my soapbox for a second. He's a shitty neighbor. The whole stress of Christmas Vacation is he's overblown his budget on a pool and he's desperately hoping for a bonus. Otherwise, he'll be in the red. He's like flirting with shopkeepers in front of his son, despite having a loving wife. And yeah, his cousin Eddie is a loser, but he's a veteran.
Yeah.
And every time
hey, Clark, it's me.
Every time cousin Eddie needs help, it's like, oh my God, this guy's a burden. Dude, the guy's a veteran with an injury. Come on, man. His neighbors are yuppie trash. But like, there's nothing about Christmas Vacation that is remotely redeemable, other than he gets a bonus at the end. It's such a stupid movie. And that and the dumb lights.
After taking his boss hostage also.
At least with Scrooged.
Played by Brian Doyle Murray, oddly.
Who probably came in to try to save. Well, there's also the whole story about how John Hughes pulled Christopher Columbus to direct that movie, and he and Chevy Chase just fought for 4 days. And he's like, I can't work with this guy. So John Hughes said, I'm writing another Christmas movie. I'd like for you to direct that one. And that was Home Alone.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like, why is Christmas Vacation a Christmas classic other than it's set on Christmas? I would say this is the better movie. It actually has a story, a better arc, and tells a better Christmas tale.
And also, Clark Griswold is never truly redeemed. The next movie, he's going to be back to start with just being a bumbling asshole. And we're going to go through this again. And that's the frustrating part of the Vacation movie.
He's a bumbling asshole in every Vacation movie. I just don't. As I've gotten older, I have found these movies more and more repugnant because Chevy Chase is just less and less likable.
Yeah. In the asshole contest between the two, Chevy Chase clearly wins. Whatever asshole Bill Murray is in real life, Chevy Chase is. Well, look it up, guys. You know what I'm going to say.
I can't help but wonder: is this breakdown Bill Murray has in the movie and the scene like? Was this like the arc from him and his personal life? I mean, he said that he wanted to spend more time with his family after Ghostbusters. I don't think that was true. I think it was because of the failure of River's Edge that he probably didn't want to act again. Because he really had his heart in that movie more than he even had in Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and the overwhelming fame that came from Ghostbusters, I don't think he was prepared for. He had SNL fame. He
wasn't comfortable with the attention, though. He never has been, clearly.
Caddyshack fame, but he was a bit player, and then that catapulted him to absolute worldwide stardom.
These guys they're human beings. They're complicated. We all have our issues. And, we talked about Harold Ramis earlier and how Harold Ramis and he, after Groundhog Day, didn't speak until right before Harold Ramis died. They had some falling out, and no one could explain it, and no one could get them together. And
it was because Bill Murray's attitude on Groundhog Day, apparently.
Well, that's what everyone says, right? It's just like the guy's just, he drinks too much of his own Kool-Aid, and that's what everyone said about
He drinks
Bob.
too much anyway.
He drinks a lot.
Well, and there's that. So I heard this story, and it's all gossip and hearsay. And I heard this story that while they were making Life Aquatic, Owen Wilson was in rehab, and Bill Murray still would offer him a drink.
Yeah, I believe that.
Like on set, would just be like, hey, you want to join us for drinks? Like, no, I'm in AA, I'm recovering. It's like, oh, okay. And then the next day, hey, you want to grab a drink? It's like, But then you hear these other stories about these things that Bill Murray does where he's like kind to people. And I don't think that's necessarily an act. I don't think Wes Anderson would keep working with somebody who's just horrible to be around. I think just everyone's got it's all situational. And whatever happened between Ghostbusters and The Razor's Edge up to Scrooged is with him and his family back in France. But, you hear a lot of horror stories up until today.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was just, there's a movie come out recently, and then we've got some inappropriateness from, the works recently.
Well, you heard about how he treats Lucy Liu on Charlie's Angels.
Oh, yeah.
And what a, misogynistic guy. And yeah, again, I wouldn't defend any of it. None of us are ever really there, but you could talk about Peter Sellers. You could talk about Steve McQueen. You separate the artist from the art, and you enjoy it as much as you can until you pull a Polanski or an Allen or a Gibson, and you're like,
we just talked about a Polanski movie. So, Joe, to your point, you have to separate the art from the artist as much as you can. Bill Murray is an asshole. He's an old Irish drunk, as he's been described so many times. But yeah, he's a human being. He's complex. He does have those photo bombs. Well, he'll come in and make somebody's life and all this. And I don't believe he's a complete asshole. But in terms of this movie, going back to the movie and away from who Bill Murray may or may not be in his private life, I think Groundhog Day, although not technically a Christmas movie, succeeds more than this movie. A simpler plot, and maybe to our point earlier, maybe it's the direction, or maybe it's just the script. I don't know.
Oh, I think I think what you're saying is, you have got a better story, a better arc, a better concept. It's not borrowed; it's original to a large extent. And I think, you've got Harold Ramis saying, "Look, this is my script. I'm funny. I made Caddyshack funny. I made Ghostbusters funny. You just got to take my hand and trust."
Vacation also, right?
Vacation, right. And that may be why that was the original. That's right. He directed that. I think Harold Ramis said Caddyshack was like an $8 million film school for him. But Harold Ramis also co-wrote Animal House.
But he knows where the heart is. For some reason, Groundhog Day has just boatloads of heart. And lightning in a bottle wise almost, that this movie doesn't have. This movie is telling you to feel a thing. Somehow Groundhog Day makes you feel.
Well, Scrooged has a heart. I just think it needed a bypass. And maybe Harold Ramis would have helped with that because, again, it is a flawed film. Groundhog Day, certainly underrated at the time, definitely gets the attention it deserves for being as clever. Probably should have gotten an Oscar nomination for Best Screenplay if it didn't. But I would say that when you see what directors bring to the table, it just look at how bad that Kevin Smith Bruce Willis cop movie turned out, or even more or more so The Last Boy Scout. The Last Boy Scout with Bruce Willis and Tony Scott, where they all came in with the best intentions to make this great flick, and the director and the star just hate each other's guts and try to stick to a good script by a brilliant screenwriter, Shane Black. Mm-hmm. And what comes out is this really flawed but fun movie. Like, I like The Last Boy Scout, but apparently Shane Black's script was a lot better until Bruce Willis tried to screw with it because of his own ego. And I guess, that's what happens sometimes.
Shane Black wrote another Christmas movie called Lethal Weapon also.
And Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
But Lethal Weapon is set during Christmas, if you
remember.
Yeah,
it is.
So is Invasion USA, Jordan. Was that a Christmas movie? I don't know.
Yes, it is, Anthony.
But why is
by the way,
Die Hard gets
Chuck Norris power.
Die Hard gets love as a Christmas movie, and Lethal Weapon doesn't. Yeah. And I think the only reason for that is Die Hard takes place actually on Christmas, and Lethal Weapon is like the span of a week or so.
But there's that great moment with Gary Busey when he walks in, and there's that image on TV, and they go, "What day is it?" And he goes, "It's Christmas, fucker."
Yeah.
All right, guys,
Gary Busey. Good stuff.
Back to this movie. Okay, so did audiences
what movie?
Oh, yeah, it's Scrooged, 1980.
Sorry. Where are we? Okay.
So anyway,
are we sponsoring Ritalin?
I think we are. So anyway,
Ritalin, our new sponsor. When you can't remember anything or your attention is slow.
So did audiences agree at the time? So on a budget of $32 million, asterisk always on these numbers. This comes from Wikipedia and other sources. It made $60 million domestic over the Thanksgiving. It was released around Thanksgiving. That's okay.
Yeah, Thanksgiving Day actually released, but perfect timing for the holiday.
Globally, makes $100 million, right? That's pretty good. 3 times your budget. It's not a smash.
Well, no, back then hitting 100 million meant sequel. I mean, not in this case because you couldn't, but hitting 100 million for a solo comedy was pretty damn remarkable. So I would say that I think was it the 4th highest grossing movie.
It went up a bit against some big guns in that same season too, like Ernest Saves Christmas,
Land Before Time,
Working Girl with Harrison Ford and Melanie Griffith and Sigourney Weaver, and Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. I mean, these were,
Ivan Reitman movie.
Yeah, and another Ivan Reitman movie, exactly. I mean, and these were some big guns in that season at that time. And Rain Man, the biggest.
And as we mentioned, 88 was a big year, and it was nominated, rightly so, I think, for an Academy Award.
For makeup effects, yeah.
But I think it found its true life on video. Even though it was a success at the time, it's obvious.
And cable.
Yeah, cable
absolutely.
and video. And it's played, I think, every year. Someone's playing it to this year. I think it succeeds despite itself, regardless of what we think of it. I think audiences at the time liked it. I think it's good enough that even people today sort of, dare I say, cherish it. I assume so, since it's still in regular repeat. You know, it's a holiday movie. You know?
It's a shame we didn't get more out of McDonagh because he unfortunately passed away. I think it was a brain aneurysm?
I thought it was cancer, or what? Am I wrong?
Or cancer. He died in 94.
Yeah, only a few years after, yeah.
Didn't have put his foot through the door and enjoy more of the limelight.
But yeah, I seriously wonder if I don't know if I'm repeating myself here too much, but with Razor's Edge, but I seriously wonder if Razor's Edge failure had an effect on Bill Murray that led up to like all this and him not wanting to do this movie.
Yeah, he's not a serious actor. He's a serio-comic actor. I think his comedic presence bleeds through everything, and that's been his Achilles heel. You know? I
believe he doesn't like the attention, though. He's clearly shy about all that attention when you confront him about something. Like, I mean, somebody confronted him with where they gave him a baseball cap a few years ago in an interview, and they said, "Hey, you're the sexiest man alive," and he was just like trying to give it to somebody else. He was like, "Oh, what is it? No, what is this? You know." He could barely even keep he didn't really, you could tell, he didn't like even that kind of adulation. He didn't care for. He didn't like it, apparently.
He wants the fame and attention on his own terms, you know, like a lot of people in Hollywood do. They don't want, I mean, he doesn't necessarily want the spotlight. I think he just wants to Bill Murray hard, make people laugh, get in, get out.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
All right, so we've discussed, I think, this movie from many different angles. Joe, I'll let you start. Out of 10, or really whatever you want to do, what kind of rating do you give this movie?
I give this movie, objectively, it's a 7 out of 10. I think it's well produced. I think the art direction and special effects are really top notch. I think it's flawed. I personally, it's one of my top 5 favorite Christmas movies for a lot of reasons. I can overlook the flaws and enjoy a Bill Murray performance and everything that comes with it. It's an enjoyable time capsule. And of all of the different ways A Christmas Carol has been told, it's my favorite. I really do think it's a great Christmas flick.
And they do take enough liberties to make it, quote unquote, more modern at the time and fresh. Yeah. Jordan, what do you think?
Well, I've had a tough time with all this press about Bill Murray recently because I've been a Bill Murray fan like since Meatballs. I saw that that was like the second movie I ever saw ever in my whole life. But the movie, I remember liking this movie when I was younger. It is flawed. I feel like it's been through the editing, but bless the editors for doing what they could to save this movie. Bless Donner and his direction. There was clear intentions going on, good intentions, obviously. I mean, despite the fact that him and Murray, but overall, I give this movie 5 out of 10 tortured souls in a ribcage.
Yeah, I'm gonna split the difference here, and I think I'm gonna do a heavy 6. This movie is a Christmas miracle. in a way. Time has been kind to it.
A miracle that it was pulled off, you're saying.
Miracles that it was pulled off. Like I said, they landed the plane, and it succeeds. The whole is more than the sum of the parts. To me, the most interesting thing is this clash of egos behind the scene and how they even pulled this whole thing off.
Yes.
But they did.
True.
And that speaks to, I think, Donner, Murray, as we've said. I think his charisma carries the film, and that's why it's probably in many people's minds will get a higher rating. Like Joe said, it's a classic holiday movie. It's probably one of many people's favorites. But I hadn't seen it in quite some time, and I liked it a lot more this time around. But more for the filmmaking aspect of it and kind of dissecting it with that mindset. But you can turn your brain off and have a good time with it. It checks all the boxes. So just a quality Christmas movie. And Joe, I want to thank you. This was a really interesting suggestion.
Yeah, it was. I didn't want to play it safe. I don't think it's a perfect film by any means. I think it's got a lot of great moving parts and something that we could all comfortably enjoy. There's a few other, like I said, The Ice Harvest is a very, very dark Christmas movie that I think most people get very uncomfortable with, but it's still a fun movie if y'all want to check out another dark Christmas movie. Or The Ref is another twisted Christmas movie that I enjoy.
Oh, Dennis Leary.
With Kevin's, and I just didn't want to spend an hour talking about Kevin Spacey touching people.
Too soon.
But a very
not
too soon at all.
He gets everything that's coming to him.
I would say that that The Ref is another, and I say this as a Bill Hicks fan. It's another cute Christmas movie with a twist. So there's a lot of nice things to change it up after the kids go to bed, or whoever, any mentally incapacitated adults like to watch cartoons. Just edit that out. No. But I would say that there are a lot of fun, older, grown-up Christmas movies to watch with a drink, and this is probably at the top of them.
I mean, my favorite Christmas movie is Invasion USA, though, because it's set during Christmas time, starring Mr. Chuck Norris. No.
Mine is still Die Hard.
Die Hard, of course, absolutely. Even though it came out. Yeah. But it's Die Hard is interesting. It's one of those movies that came out in the summer and is a Christmas movie. And then, like, even Batman Returns, same deal. Like, set in the Christmas, came out as a summer movie.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's what was the Ref actually came out months after Christmas.
That's right. It was like January or something, or February.
It was just like,
I dare say,
Lethal Weapon.
It's like people love a good, dark, bloody Christmas movie. You know what I mean? Like the new David Harbour movie. Like, that's going to be a smash unless it's horrible. I don't know.
I mean, Silent Night, Deadly Night.
I haven't seen it.
Part 2 especially is really a great Christmas movie. But I will say this movie does retain the spirit of Dickens, though. I'm sure Dickens would be okay with the movie.
But it's funny that throughout this movie, they never actually call it a Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Like, even in the beginning, it's Dickens' classic Scrooge, and it's like, that's not what it's. It's public domain. I've never understood why that.
It's interesting that I know when they were shooting the movie, it was actually called Scrooge, and that's what's on the script page, even the script as the title. But then they changed it to Scrooged, like you're screwed or something. That's what I thought the title implied. This Christmas you're going to get Scrooged.
Yeah, they definitely marketed this film with the Ghostbusters in mind. I think they said Bill Murray is used to fighting ghosts, and now the roles are reversed, or now it's 3 against 1, something like that. So his absence, and somebody said every year he's gone is another $1 million on his paycheck or something, because he was in demand.
Mm-hmm. Well, the 3 he was against were O'Donoghue, Donner, and everyone else in this film, apparently.
And Mitch Glazer, the other writer.
And himself. Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
But anyway, guys, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much. I hope this helps get everyone in the Christmas spirit.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
May it be a joyous one.
And next time we'll be talking. Thank you, Joe, for joining us on our podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you, Joe. Nice to meet you, Joe. This is the first time we've met on the podcast.
It is. It is. I do not know this person.
Yeah, if we didn't run you off, maybe at some point you want to come talk about another movie in the future. We'll see.
Yeah, just hit me up, man. This has been it's been a pleasure. I enjoy this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun to geek out about movies. And next time we'll be talking about some other film, probably not a dark Christmas, a Black Christmas satire, but maybe. I don't
probably
know
with less vodka and tab.
Yeah,
together. Probably with less tortured souls in a ribcage. Yeah.
And maybe not with the Bobcat Goldthwait wielding a shotgun.
God, I hope, though.
Committing numerous crimes.
I hope, though. I can pray and hope for that, right?
Well, you don't get a Christmas miracle without a shotgun being wielded. But anyways...
Anthony, be careful. What you're saying.
Cutting that out.
That's legal. You might be liable if it's... I'm sorry.
Well, in Texas...
Prank caller.
In Texas, that's okay.
Oh, and by the way, if you would like to learn more about Richard Burton, you can find his movies at your local library. You can find Exodus 1 and 2 and Night of the Iguana, hopefully. Anyway,
so thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you, yes.
I hope you had fun. And this has been...
Robots to my podcast, man. Hello, Wabbit.
All trailers, clips, music, or any other copyrighted material are used sparingly, edited from their original forms, and used for the purposes of criticism, discussion, commentary, and education about these fine films.